Hello, welcome to Teaching the Bible. I'm your host, Michael Kotch. Teaching the Bible is a weekly Bible teaching television program that basically covers all of the main events that take place in the Bible. It starts with the first words in the book of Genesis, and it moves through each major event and teaching, progressively through the Bible on each show, until eventually later in the year we will end with the end of the book of Revelation. Teaching the Bible is based on basically the English Standard Version of the Bible. The majority of the material from all of my teachings comes from the English Standard Version of the Bible. And what I try to do is teach the Bible, and only the Bible, which means that everything that I say in here, everything that I say in here is taken directly from the Bible. Either direct quotes, where it's directly quoted from the Bible, or I summarize it and shorten it because it might have been very long, but all the information is from the Bible. It's not from any other source, or it's not my own opinion. So by the end of this program's run, whenever it may end, when I complete the book of Revelation, whoever watches the show from week to week will have a very comprehensive overview of the entire Bible. Now, last week was our first episode, and we started in the beginning of Genesis with creation. We learned about how in the beginning there was just God up in heaven and nothing else. And at one point he decided to create everything else, and he spoke everything into existence. He created the entire universe in 6 days. He created man. He created woman. And then we learned how man and woman, Adam and Eve, fell, where Eve and Adam, I guess, was tempted by the devil. And what he tempted them with was God told them, God was with them, God loved them, God took care of them, God spoke to them every day. They had a great relationship with God. God told them, whatever you do, I command you, do not eat from this tree in the middle of the garden, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. If you do, you will surely die. Satan, the great serpent, came and tempted Eve and said, you will not die. If you eat from that, you're going to become like God. And God doesn't want that. And so if you do that, you'll be a God like him. So he tempted her with, hey, if you go against what God says, you're going to be God like him. He tempted her with pride, wanting to be God. That's how Satan fell. Satan wanted to be God. And there's only one God. So Satan was cast out of heaven as a profane thing. Satan tempted Adam and Eve with what he fell for, and it worked. They went against God, trying to become like God, which is forbidden, which they didn't become like him. Satan lied to them, and they fell in their sin. But God, didn't wipe them out or whatever. Why did he make us in the first place? He wants children. And eventually see that when we get to the end of the book of Revelation, those who love and follow Jesus Christ will be saved and will be with him eternally as adopted children of God the Father, and actually brothers and sisters of Jesus Christ. But we'll get to that when we get later on into the New Testament. Where we're picking up now is with Adam and Eve's children. The next big event in the Bible is Adam and Eve had children. So let's go there. Cain and Abel. Adam and Eve were husband and wife, and they had a son, and they named him Cain. Then they had a second son, they named him Abel. Cain became a farmer, and Abel became a shepherd of sheep. Since God loved them and took care of them, Cain and Abel brought offerings to God. Abel brought the firstborn of his flock to God as an offering, while Cain brought an offering of things that he grew. For an unspecified reason, God liked Abel's gift, but he did not like the gift that Cain presented to him. We'll see there's something not right about what Cain presented to God, and Cain knew it, but he presented it anyway, and God was not happy with it. So Cain became very angry that God was not happy with his gift. And this is what God said to Cain. Now again, back then, and we'll see up until the time of Moses, at some point in Moses, God spoke to his chosen people directly. He spoke to them, I don't want to say face-to-face, I don't know if it was face-to-face, but he spoke with them, and they spoke back to him. At some point in Moses, we'll see that what happened. Basically, when we get there, the people said to Moses, please ask God not to talk to us face to face, because he's so frightening and powerful and awesome, we're afraid we're going to die in his presence. Could you have him tell somebody a message and bring it to us instead? So Moses went up to God and asked him, is that okay? God said, that's fine. And that's when God started using prophets. But back here, he's still talking to people face to face. He talked to Cain, and he said to Cain, why are you angry, and why has your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must rule over it. That's in Genesis chapter 4, verses 6 to 7. So Cain's mad at God because God won't accept his gift. And God said, Cain, what are you mad at for? You know what you brought me wasn't good. You know, if you do good, I'll be happy with you. If you don't do good to me, I'm not going to be happy. What do you expect? But sin is trying to get you. You can't let it in. You got to rule over it. Well, he didn't. Right after this, Cain spoke with his brother Abel. And while they're in the field, for some unknown reason, Cain killed his brother Abel. And this is the first murder in history. This is in Genesis chapter 4, verses 1 to 8. So sin is already wreaking havoc on mankind with the first 4 people that ever lived. Adam and Eve went against God to try to become a god like him, which was forbidden, which was a lie in the first place. They rebelled against him and sinned. And then they had kids, and the one kid killed the other kid. But they're adults now. They weren't even kids. So 3 out of the first 4 people sinned greatly, and the 4th one was murdered. Sin is already wreaking havoc on mankind. So after Cain murdered Abel, God came to Cain and said, what did you do? You killed your brother. Because of this, you're going to be cursed and you're going to wander the earth. Now Cain pleaded with God for mercy. He said, oh God, I can't handle that. You know, when more people fill the earth, they'll come after me for vengeance because I'm a murderer, or they'll hunt me down like an animal because I'm a murderer. It's more than I can bear. Well, God showed him mercy. And he made it so that he took care of Cain and made it so that nobody would come after him, and he took care of him. Now God made a wife for Cain, and they had children. Adam and Eve, Cain's parents, also had more children. Back then, God allowed people to live to be over 900 years old. Now, I'm not sure why, but I could guess the world was completely empty. They had to fill it up. You know, if people died early, it would take forever to fill it up with people. God wanted this world to be fruitful and multiply, full of people. So people lived to be like 900 years old way back when. People kept having children, and over time, the earth was full of people. This is in Genesis chapter 4, verse 9 to 25, Genesis chapter 5, verses 1 to 32. Now, the next big event that we read about is Noah and the ark. People multiplied greatly on the earth. Now, what I'm going to read next is directly from the Bible. I'm not going to try to interpret it because it's wild. And I have guesses on what this might mean, but I don't even want to put it out there because I could be wrong. But it's wild. If you ever say that the Bible is a boring book, it isn't. A lot of supernatural stuff happens. So Adam and Eve had more children, and Cain had children, and they had children, and it filled the earth. And this is the next thing that we read. English Standard Version Bible, Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 to 5. When man began to multiply in the face of the land, and daughters were born to man, the sons of God saw the daughters were attractive. And they took as their wives any they chose. Then the Lord said, my spirit shall not abide in man forever. For he is flesh, his days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of man, and they bore children with them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. What's that all about? So the world filled up with people, and some beings called the sons of God came down and mated with the daughters of humans and created these, whatever they were, children called the Nephilim, that were these great people. Okay, read it yourself. That's Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 to 4. I'm not even going to try to interpret that. So what do we hear next? This is the very next thing that we hear in the Bible. This is Genesis chapter 6, verses 5 to 8. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Wow. So man at that point, every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Man became completely evil. And the Lord regretted that he made man on earth, and it grieved him to his heart. So the Lord said, I will blot out man who I have created from the face of the land, man and animals and creeping things and birds of the heavens, for I am sorry that I made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. So what do we have here? Is this connected? I don't know. First, right before that, we read that the sons of God mated with the daughters of a man and had the Nephilim. And then the very next thing we read was, man became so evil that all they had was evil thoughts continuously. That's all they had. Evil, evil, evil. To the point where God said, I got to start over. This is horrible, completely corrupted. But he found one guy that he thought was good. His name was Noah. Now remember, God made us because he wanted us to be his children. He wants us to continue. Despite our own evil efforts and keep messing it up, God wants us to continue and do well. So he found this one guy named Noah. What does the Bible say about Noah? It says, Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. Noah walked with God. So Noah was righteous and blameless, and he walked with God. That's from Genesis chapter 6, verses 9 to 10. So God decided he would save Noah from the flood and repopulate the earth from his offspring. And you can find that in Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 to 8. God came to Noah and revealed to him that due to the violence that man filled the earth with, he would destroy all the flesh in the world with the flood. God made his covenant with Noah because he found Noah to be righteous before him. He told Noah to make a boat called an ark. He told him to put his family in the ark, along with one male and one female of every animal on earth, and bring food to feed everyone and every animal. It took Noah a very long time to build this ark, but one day it was finally finished. God sent all the animals to Noah to put in the ark, and Noah and his family got in the ark, and God sealed the door so the water would not get in. So Noah and his family got in the ark, and God sealed it up for them. God then sent rain to the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and the whole world was flooded. God also caused water to spring up from inside the earth. This is interesting. About 3 years ago or so, 4 years ago, I saw a science report. I don't remember where it's from, but it caught my attention. It said, scientists believe that there's actually more water inside the earth than there is on all the oceans on the outside of the earth. And I thought, wow. And the Bible says that God flooded the world not just by rain, but causing water to come up from inside the earth through springs and flood the earth. The water was so high that it covered all the mountaintops, even like Mount Everest, the highest, everything was covered, so that this evil man could not climb to the top of the mountain and avoid the flood. He made sure that they were all destroyed because they're so evil and wicked. Now, all the people in the world drowned because they were so evil, but God saved Noah and his family. Noah and his family floated in the ark for 150 days. Finally, the flood started to go away. The ark landed on top of a mountain called Mount Ararat, and I believe that's in Turkey. I'm not sure, but I think Mount Ararat's in Turkey. Noah, his family, and all the animals got out of the ark. God made a promise to Noah that he would never again send a worldwide flood. He sent a rainbow to Noah and told him that every time we see a rainbow, it is God remembering that he would never again wipe out mankind with the flood. God also increased the lifespan of man once again from the 120-year restriction that he put on it due to their evil hearts. Noah lived to be 950 years old. We can read this in Genesis chapter 6, verses 9 to 22, chapter 7, verses 1 to 24, chapter 8, verses 1 to 19, and chapter 9, verses 1 to 28. Now, the next event that major event that takes place in the Bible is the Tower of Babel. So after Noah's family came out of the ark, they had children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, etc., and they became a many people. That's in Genesis chapter 10, verses 1 to 32. Now, everybody at this time spoke the same language, okay? Remember, God gave people language in the beginning. Adam and Eve didn't come out, and not knowing how to speak, and somebody had to teach them how to speak like we do with children. There's nobody to teach them. They're the first ones. They came out speaking to God. They came out with language. God gave them language right from the start. And this language that Adam and Eve had, they passed down to their children or grandchildren. That was the one language. So, after Noah and his family repopulated and became more and more and more people, they settled in one place in the land of Shinar. And this is what they said. They said, "Come, let us build a city and a tower with its top into the heavens. And let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the earth." And they said this in Genesis chapter 11, verse 4. Now, when God saw the city and this tower that the humans were building, he said, "Behold, there are only one people, and they all have one language. And this is only the beginning of what they will do. And nothing that they propose to do will be impossible for them." God said that in Genesis chapter 11, verse 6. So God decided to stop it. Now, why would he stop this? I'm just guessing, but again, it's not a wild guess or my own. It's based on what it says here in the Bible. So what did they do? These are things possibly God could be mad at or upset about. These people said, we're going to build a tower up that reaches into the heavens. Pride, maybe? Remember, Satan said, I want my throne to be, in the north of the heavens. I want my throne to be a high, possibly. And let's make a name for ourselves. Possibly pride. Lest we be dispersed all over the earth. Now, it's possible that God said, look, I want you to spread out and fill the whole earth. And they said, no, we're going to stay in one place. And not only are we going to stay in one place, we're going to build this tower that pokes right up into heaven. I'm not sure, but those are the only three things that are mentioned. And for some reason, God said, look, we got to stop this. And he said, this is only the beginning of what they're going to do. Now, remember, God just a little while ago got finished wiping out all mankind because they became progressively evil. Maybe he knew, God knows everything, that if he doesn't intervene, they're going to follow in the same path. I'm not sure. Okay? But so he decided to stop them. So how did God stop this? God confused everyone's language so they could now not understand each other. Remember, before they all spoke one language. Now they spoke all different languages. When they tried to speak to each other, it sounded like babbling. This caused them to call the tower that they built the Tower of Babel. It also caused the people to abandon this tower in the city and spread out from each other and fill the earth. This is in Genesis chapter 11, verses 1 to 9. Okay, next we're moving on to the next big event in the Bible. And the next big event is actually a big person. His name is Abraham. Okay, in the beginning, his name is Abram. In the beginning, his name is Abram, and his wife's name is Sarai. God decided to use them in a huge way. And in the Bible, a lot of times when God would take somebody and said, I'm going to use you for my purposes, he would change their name. This was their name, now it's not. Like he changed Abram's name to Abraham. He would change Jacob's name to Israel. There are other people. Jesus changed Peter's name, I think, from Simon to Peter to Cephas. He changed Matthew's name from Levi to Matthew. Okay, so Abraham was a man. And again, God was at times speaking directly to people. I don't know if he spoke to everybody, but he spoke to major people that he wanted to use for his purposes. And Abraham was one of these people. And the main point behind Abraham is faith. Okay? God told Abraham to do a couple very, very big faith things in his life. Now, what is faith? People use the word faith a lot. This is my understanding of faith from studying the Bible as long as I have and work with other Christians. Faith is what God says, I believe in and I follow. Okay? What God says, I trust that it's true, and what God tells me to do, I follow. Okay? So faith is, not just belief in anything. I have faith in my own self-confidence. No. Christian faith is, if God said it, I believe it's true. If God tells me to do something, I will follow it. And God told Abraham to do a couple very big things. And he had two major successes, and one was one of the probably, in my opinion, the biggest test of faith. We'll get to this next week. That happened in the Bible, and he passed, but he had a faith failure before that. We'll read that today. We'll read one success and one failure in faith. But you got to understand all throughout the Bible, especially the Old Testament, God's blessings for the people are usually conditional. Now, he loves us unconditionally. He loves everybody. He wants everybody to be saved. Jesus said, God said, I desire that no one be lost. I want everybody to follow Jesus, love him, trust him, be saved. But his blessings could be conditional. And they usually go like this. Blessings and warnings, okay, or consequences. God will say, if you do this, then I will do this good thing for you. If you do this, then I will do this good thing for you. If you do this is what's going to happen to you, bad. If you do this is what's going to happen to you, bad. Okay? So that's kind of how God operates, at least all throughout the Old Testament. A lot of you hear preachers just say, God will bless you, just bless you because you want. No, usually he'll tell you to do something, okay? And so you'll see what happens with Abraham. So after the fall of the Tower of Babel, people spread out over the earth and they multiplied. There was a man named Abram in the land of Haran. God came to Abram and told him to go from his country and to take his family to a land that God would show him. If he did this, Here's the if. If he took his family and took them to a land that he would show them, God promised to bless Abram and make a great nation from his descendants, and his name would be great throughout history. His descendants would be numerous as the sands of grain on the seashore. And God said, and if you do this, in you all the families of the earth will be blessed. And God said this in Genesis chapter 12, verse 3. So again, God is directly still talking to people. He told us to Abram. Now, Abram went as God told him. Big test of faith. God said, listen, you've been living here your whole life. You'll see Abram was 75 at the time. And we'll get into that in a minute. Take your family, take everything you've established here, and you're going to just leave this behind, and you're going to move to wherever I tell you. That's a big deal. It's hard to just drop your life and move. But he told Abram to do that, and Abram did it. Abram passed his very first big faith test, which is, if you're telling me to do it, God, I'm going to do it. Okay? Now, Abram was 75 years old at the time when God appeared and told him to leave where he's at, take his family, and move. Good point to this. You are never too old to be used by God. God didn't even start using Abram until he's 75. God didn't even start using Moses until he's 80. So don't ever think that I'm too old. God can't use me. My time's past. Stay faithful to God. Give your life to God. Ask God to use you. Give your life over and say, God, use me however you will. And see what happens. So Abram at 75 took his wife Sarai and his nephew Lot with him on their journey to the land of Canaan. When they arrived at the land of Canaan, God told Abram that he would give this land to his offspring. He would give his land of Canaan to his offspring. At the time, the Canaanites were living in the land. Abram built an altar there, but he kept on moving to the land of Negeb, where God instructed him to go at this point. This is Genesis chapters 11 and 12, Genesis 12, verses 1 to 9. Now, there's a famine in the land that Abram was in. So Abram went down to Egypt due to this famine. Abram told his wife Sarai, because she was beautiful, he feared that the Egyptians would kill him and take her if they found out that he was her husband. So he instructed her to lie to them and say that, I'm not his wife, I'm actually his sister. Because he was afraid, well, if they find out they're married to me, they might kill me because you're so beautiful and try to steal you. So lie to him. Tell him that you're not my wife, you're my sister. And Sarai did that. Well, news about her beauty eventually reached Pharaoh, who took her into his home and dealt well with Abram. But God afflicted Pharaoh and his house with severe plagues because he took Abram's wife, another man's wife. Pharaoh realized what happened and angrily called on Abram and said, why did you tell me that Sarai was your sister instead of your wife, and causes God to send these plagues on me? And then Pharaoh sent them both away angrily. That's in Genesis chapter 12, verses 10 to 20. On another occasion, years later, Abram did the exact same thing. Abram told King Abimelech that Sarai was his sister instead of telling her the truth, and no, she's actually my wife. Now, Abram eventually went up from Egypt back to the land of Negeb with Sarai and his nephew Lot. Both Abram and Lot were rich in possessions and livestock, to the point where the land could not support the herds of both of them. So Abram decided that they needed to split up, because they could no longer fit in the same land together with their herds. Abram gave Lot first choice of where he would settle. Lot chose to settle in a city called Sodom, because it was well watered everywhere like Egypt was. Abram decided to settle in the land of Canaan. That's in Genesis chapter 13, verses 1 to 13. Now, at one point, there was battles between the kings of the surrounding areas of where they were at, and Abram's nephew Lot was captured during one of these battles. Abram gathered 301 men to rescue Lot, his people, and Lot's possessions, which he did. And when Abram returned, he was blessed by Melchizedek, the king of Salem, priest of the Most High God. Now, what we'll see much, much later in the New Testament, they talk about this Melchizedek. This Melchizedek was a priest of God, and the king of Salem. He was a supernatural being. He was eternal. He lived forever. So this wasn't just any priest. Jesus later is said to be, the head of the line of the priesthood of the order of Melchizedek. This Melchizedek was a special guy made by God. He wasn't just any ordinary priest. So after Abram rescued Lot and brought him his family, Melchizedek blessed Abram, saying, "Blessed be Abram by God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who delivers your enemies in your hand. Now Melchizedek said that in Genesis chapter 14, verses 19 and 20. Abram then gave Melchizedek 1/10 of everything that he owned. And it looks like the first evidence of tithing going on. Tithing is a Jewish practice where you would give 1/10 of your money or possessions or whatever over to God. God appeared to Abram and told him that he will have a son, and this son will be his heir. He told him that his offspring will be as numerous as the stars. He then gave Abram the following prophecy. Now, pay attention to this prophecy. God said to Abram, hey, Abram, I want to let you know this is going to happen in the future. And what he tells him about is the events of Moses and the Israelites. Okay, so listen to the prophecy way in the future. Listen to prophecy that God says, Abram, this is going to happen to your descendants one day. God said to Abram, know for certain that your offspring will be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and they will be servants there, and they will be afflicted for 400 years. But I will bring judgment on the nation that they serve, and afterward they shall come out with great possessions. And they shall come back here in the 4th generation, for the iniquity of the Amorites not yet complete. That's in Genesis chapter 15, verse 12 to 14, and chapter 16. That's what happened. That's what happened with Moses. You know, the Israelites will see, they moved into Egypt through some events through Joseph, and they multiplied there, and Egyptians became afraid of them and made them slaves. They were slaves for 400 years. God heard their cries, and God sent Moses, and he worked through Moses to free them. Now, at this time with Abram, there were 2 cities that did very evil things. The cities' names were Sodom and Gomorrah. God told Abram that he would destroy these 2 cities because they were overwhelmingly evil. But this made Abram sad. He didn't want God to kill people. He asked God if he could find just 10 people who were not evil in these cities, would God not destroy them? God said, yeah, if I could find 10 good people in these cities for you, Abram, because you asked me, I will not destroy them if I could find 10 good people in the cities. I won't destroy the cities. God looked as thoroughly as he could, and he's perfect, so he looked perfectly. But he could not find 10 good people in either of these cities. They're not evil. So he had to destroy the cities. Now, God first allowed Abram to save his nephew Lot and his family from Sodom. He got him out of there before God destroyed it. Now, before God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, he sent down 2 angels to the cities to meet the people who lived there, just so God can make sure that Sodom and Gomorrah were actually as evil as he knew them to be. There. When the angels arrived in Sodom and Gomorrah, when the people saw them, they tried to attack them so they could sexually assault the angels. Wow. He rained fire and brimstone down on Sodom and Gomorrah, completely destroying both cities. And you can read that in Genesis chapter 18, verses 1 to 33, Genesis chapter 19, verses 1 to 29. Okay, that's it for today. We are going to pick up next week with the birth of Abraham's 2 sons. There's a lot of drama coming up. And we're going to see this big test of faith that Abraham, 2 of them, he fails the first one, but he learns from it. Second one is probably the biggest test of faith in the whole